good evening. This is a special telecast. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and joining us on the show, we've got Colonel Ajay Shukla, senior journalist and strategic affairs expert. Shaina NC represents the Congress party. Sanjay Jha represents the, Shaina NC represents the BJP. Sanjay Jha represents the Congress party. And Maruf Raza, consultant with the Times Group and, of course, strategic affairs expert. So thank you very much. And Shaina and Sanjay, I wish I could say the two of you will be on the same side of the political spectrum, but apologies for that faux pas. Let me begin with you, Colonel Shukla. In the 10th October order, the Supreme Court had categorically stated that and had sought information only on the process followed, whether the required norms were adhered to, whether the required process was followed for satisfaction. No information was sought on pricing, no information was sought on offset partners. Today we see the Supreme Court has just gone the other way. You know, on this petition, it wants the whole gamut details of deals, it wants pricing, it wants offset partners, and it wants in less than no under than 10 days. And it has very categorically stated, give it to us in a sealed envelope, and if you can't, give us an affidavit. More on that later. But what do you believe has changed between the 10th of October to the 31st? In 21 days, what has changed? Why have the courts changed their mind on Rafale?
Oh, it seems quite apparent to me, Supriya, that the court has read the response of the government to that 10th October order. The response was supposed to be submitted on the 29th of October, so the government has had 2 days to go through the Supreme Court has had 2 days to go through the response. And it clearly believes that that response does not merit the high degree of secrecy that the government is according it. So today when it came, it was no longer a case of we are not interested in the cost and technical specifications. They specifically demanded cost and technical specifications, but they also demanded details of the Indian offset partner. Now the Indian offset partner and the sort of complaint about why the Anil Ambani group has been chosen to get the bulk of the offsets forms a large part of the petition of Yashwant Sinha, Arun Shourie and Prashant Bhushan that the court heard today. So the court has clearly been it believes that there is some merit in the case, or there could be some merit in the case that certainly warrants examination. So these now all three aspects have been opened up. And what's more, the court is not really allowing the government to hide behind this aspect of secrecy. Today, the Attorney General Venugopal actually got up in court. I was there and I saw, and he tried to make this aspect of secrecy, to which the court very flatly said, you please give it to us in a sealed cover. We will be examining it and we need to examine it. So I think you're seeing the court responding first to the merits of the petition by Yashwant Sinha, Arun Shourie and Prashant Bhushan, and secondly to the response of the government to the that had to come in by 29th October.
No, I kind of agree with you there, but you know, Maruf, I have a very direct question to ask of you. It isn't as if the courts have said, just give it to us in a sealed envelope. To K K Venugopal, they said, if you believe this is under the Official Secret Act and you cannot give it to us in a sealed envelope, you please tell that to us on an affidavit. So the government is going to be in a bind. They either give the details or they tell the court on a sworn affidavit that they cannot divulge the details, and then that cannot be done at any later stage. It cannot perhaps be done, I'm presuming, to the Accountant General. I don't think it can be done to Parliament, because Official Secrets Act will mean that it can't be revealed anywhere. Is my understanding right? And are we really looking and staring at the courts moving towards a complete evaluation of the Rafale deal?
Well, you know, to some extent, I would like to state that the government today is in a bind because from the very beginning they have not handled the responses that they gave out to the allegations against them effectively. Now, there are 3 or 4 aspects which I believe must be understood. One is that the honorable courts are well within their rights to ask the government, and the government can then respond accordingly. But the bottom line is that these jets which have been agreed on, the 36 jets, are coming at a price which is far below than what was being negotiated at the UPA government. Some of us have seen those documents, and the fact is the deal also gives us 36 jets at a better pricing, and the Air Force says with more equipment than they were sold for 24 jets in the case of Qatar and Egypt. So therefore, the price the government has got is apparently a good one. I don't know why they are dragging their feet on it. The third thing is the pricing, to some extent, if you go into the nitty-gritty, would give out the details of the equipment it holds, but it doesn't really give away the whole strategic capabilities of these aircrafts if you were to respond in the manner I think the Supreme Court desires from the government, that what is the broad breakdown of the pricing of the jets. That means the bare shell and the loaded versions, and of course the offset issue. Now that's the third fact. Now as far as the offset is concerned, the government does not really appoint offset partners. It comes from the maker who engages the offset partner. But in this case, let's assume the government was in the know. Even if they were, there is no harm in giving out the details through their arrangements with Dassault, who the offset partners are. It cannot go to one company as per the tradition and the rules laid out in the DPP. So therefore, Ambani may be one of the offset partners, perhaps a major one. And nowhere does it say that you have.
Others.
And the last point, please understand that one of the reasons why the private partner is being engaged, because repeatedly the Air Force has not expressed confidence in the HAL. Whatever Mr. Gandhi's engagement with them might
come
indicate.
to HAL. Maruf.
2-3 successive air chiefs have said.
Right. Okay. Maruf, you raised an important point about HAL, and we'll come to that in just a bit, because this is about the Supreme Court today. And Shaina NC, I want to ask you a direct question. The government is in a bind. You cannot deny today that this is a big blow to your stance so far. The Supreme Court doesn't just want to know whether the process was followed. The Supreme Court is now also interested in knowing what the pricing was, how was the offset partner chosen, who were the others who were ousted. There is every detail that the court is interested to know, and this is no ordinary court. This is the apex court of the land. And to your point about this being under the Official Secret Act, the court says, give it to us in writing on an affidavit, then it is.
Well, the court is entitled to ask its question, but we as the government are very clear. There has been no wrongdoing at all. There is no question of any kind of grey area when it comes to the intent. If at all, we have few questions to ask too, which is, why did the deal not happen during the UPA tenure? HAL and Dassault obviously did not go through on their they were not on board together, because we know for a fact that HAL was in no position to provide a guarantee. So it's not about us choosing whoever they chose to work with. It is for Dassault to decide who they chose to work with, and they did so. I think the fact that you have a guarantee clause in any contract is testimony to performance and also delivery time frame. We are aware that the promise that was made by Dassault that the offset contract worth a certain amount would be given. There was no push from the Indian government whatsoever. We have nothing to hide except the secrecy clause, which is within the parameters of the Defence Ministry. I'm sure that our government in our affidavit will disclose to the honourable courts whatever is necessary, but nobody was coercing or forcing a signing of a contract or suggesting that one party be used vis-a-vis another. I think we need to understand that the deal is absolutely clean. There is no area of grey or corruption, and unlike the previous dispensation who chose to be privy to all kinds of deals and deal makers, we have stood our own ground. IAF would not provide a guarantee for the jets, and we know that we had to have the independence of Dassault choosing the organization they would choose to work with for
Shaina,
their own merit and reasons and guarantee clauses. And please do understand.
Shaina, let me come in there. And Sanjay Jha, I will ask you a direct question. I think, the government of the day has itself to blame as far as dragging its feet on details are concerned. I mean, if you could tell in Parliament once, why can't you say it another time? Now you're telling the courts it's Official Secrets Act. But the direct question to you is, you have no moral victory here, because to your petition and to your, to the earlier petition, the Congress party had that day said, Supreme Court is not the right forum. We don't want the Supreme Court to be resolving this issue. It's for the CAG. Are you today going to now put your weight behind what's happening in the Supreme Court? Because this is also changing of stance in many ways. One of your spokespersons was on our channel that very day, and he very categorically said, we believe Supreme Court is not the right authority to do this, and it should be done elsewhere. Because the courts now want to know all details, are you going to do a complete volte-face and say Supreme Court should be doing this?
Supriya, one thing is very obvious, that the Rafale scam involves both corporate malfeasance as well as crony capitalism backed by a very, very, shall we say, buddy and chummy government. Now, as far as we are concerned, we have submitted voluminous documents to the CAG and to the CVC already. However, there are other petitioners. I think, as Ajay Shukla was rightly pointing out, there are people like Mr. Sinha, Mr. Shuri, and Mr. Bhushan who have made their own separate petitions to the Supreme Court. Now, the truth of the matter is that the BJP can use the boiler template response and dismiss this with the usual rhetoric along with some of its supporters in the panel. But the fact of the matter is that the Supreme Court asked Supriya for whether the government had adhered to the protocol or the processes of purchase of the Rafale jets. Now, I have some relatives in the bureaucracy, and they told me that, when the government purchases even a screw or a needle or a pen, it has a complex, RFP processes that have to be entailed. Now, here you have over several years a negotiation for the Rafale jets. They went through various contract negotiations committee. And then you have Narendra Modi landing up in Paris and unilaterally altering the entire transaction. I mean, he changed the technology of transfer, he changed the number of aircrafts, and the price went up by an astronomical 300%. Now, for anyone to dismiss that as, sophisticated weaponry added later, etc., is all mumbo jumbo. And I think the Supreme Court now asking for the price, and the Supreme Court now asking for the offset partner transaction, which I believe is the crux of the entire corruption issue, because you dumped an established manufacturer, much criticized, but as we all know, that HAL actually is got far more credentials than Reliance can ever hope to have. And the argument given by Eric Trappier, who's the head of Dassault, that they gave it to Reliance because Reliance has got land, is frankly speaking disingenuous, because at the end of the day, HAL has more land and has it closer to the airport than Reliance Defense has. So I think this whole monumental scam is gradually going to unearth. And with the Supreme Court in command, now I think Mr. Modi will have a lot to explain to the people of India.
Okay. I am very glad to see the Supreme Court suddenly in command, and the Congress party's absolute faith in the Supreme Court, because this is exactly the Supreme Court that we were questioning some time back, and this is exactly the Supreme Court on the 10th of October when you said, Supreme Court is not the right authority. Why is this being done in the Supreme Court? And this is not to your credit. This is to the credit of Prashant Bhushan and Arun Shourie and Yashwant Sinha. Having said that, I think let's come to the most contentious part of this.
1 minute, very important.
1 second.
Supriya, we still believe this matter has to be investigated by the JPC. This matter has to be investigated by the JPC. The reason why we said not the Supreme Court, because there were some petitioners who went on their own, and we were not very convinced of their motivations.
Sanjay, I will come back to you. Colonel Ajay Shukla, the question really, 1 second. I think the question that one must move on to is the selection of the offset partner. The courts now need to know what sort of process was followed, because this is really the big bone of contention. The charges that are being leveled against the government are not so much on other issues as much as it is on the selection of the offset partner. First, help us understand, why has this become such a bone of contention for the courts? Why do the courts want to know offset partner issue? And is this a big shot in the arm for the opposition, which wants to put the government on the back foot on precisely this point? Ajay Shukla.
Answering the second part of your question first, yes, there is definitely a blow to the government today, because all along it has been hiding behind this issue of secrecy. And by saying that you have to now give us on a signed affidavit what exactly is secret and what exactly is not, the government has put the BJP on a spot. It is one thing to have people like Shaina NC coming on TV and in press conferences and saying everything is secret, we can't reveal anything. It's quite another matter to have to say exactly the same thing in an affidavit to the Supreme Court. So the BJP will have to be a lot more careful now about what it classifies as secret, because it will have to be supported by an affidavit, and what it will actually have to reveal information on. That means more information is now going to come out into the public domain, and that means that the BJP is going to find itself further in a corner, and the opposition will have more sticks to beat the BJP with. It's a simple calculation of weapons and effect. As far as the offsets partner issue goes, I don't want to take a side here, but it is really difficult to explain the choice of the Anil Ambani group as an offsets partner. Ask any businessman what he looks for in a partner overseas in manufacturing stuff. Ask anybody what they look for in the terms of the financial credibility of that partner, and you will always come back to the question, why on earth did Dassault choose Reliance? And that's a question which the government will now have to provide some form of answer to the Supreme Court of. It's one thing to say, we don't know, Dassault chose the offsets partner, and that might even be technically correct. But the fact is that the incongruity of that choice is so jarring, and it raises so many questions that it becomes difficult to just say they choose and let the matter die at that. So these are questions that the BJP will have difficulties getting answers to. And finally, one short point that I'd like to make. It's not just the question, not just the question of the selection of offsets partner, the question of how the decision was arrived at to jettison the 126 Rafale contract and go in for a 36 Rafale contract. Were the procedures for an intergovernmental agreement followed? That is a serious question, and the BJP will have to provide answers to that.
Okay, just hold on to that point, because I want to go back to the offset clause. And Maruf, one of the points that's said again and again is, and now there is a new point that's coming to fore, is that there are going to be 30 odd other partners. Are we just talking about subcontracts here, or will there really be so many more offset partners? Are we talking about this main Dassault Reliance contract, and offshoots of those will be subcontracts, and that's what we are referring to as far as those 30 offset contracts are concerned? Because this is confusing, and this is an argument that's being made very late in the day. If this was in fact true, why was this argument not made on the first day in the first place itself?
Well, Supriya, you see, that's a very good question that you've raised. Let me also respond to one or two points Colonel Shukla has made, who I respect greatly. You see, the thing is, there are certain parts of the capability of the aircraft which you don't really need to hide under a shroud of secrecy. For instance, what is its flying range? How much can its range be expanded? What is the capability of the aircraft in terms of the speed it can take, and the other kind of basics that come with a fighter aircraft? Now, that is something which is in the public domain. I think the only thing that the Air Force and the government would not like to make public is the add-on capabilities, which means what kind of missiles, what kind of sighting systems, what kind of other capabilities like radar, jammers, etc., that could be on board. And that is something the government has to explain to the distinguished court. Now, the second point is about the offset issue. You see, the offset does not insist, and even Rafale and their makers, Dassault, cannot necessarily, and I don't think we have any capability here in India for one company to handle all the offset requirements. Firstly, out of the 50% of the offset, which means France will have to plow that back into India, only 30% of that 50%, which means 30% of the total cost would go into the defense industrial complex, 20% of that cost would go into various other fields within India. Now, within the amount which goes into the defense industrial complex, Reliance cannot deliver on all those counts. It will be one of the offset partners. Your question is, will it be subcontracts? No. I mean, somebody will be making the seats, somebody will be making, certain other assembly systems within the aircraft, somebody may be able to make certain subsequent frames, etc., etc. Please also remember, There are two chiefs, air chiefs, who have gone on writing, and one I recently interacted with last week in Calcutta, and they've all told me that HAL is a very good license assembler. HAL in 40 years has not reached the capability of manufacturing, and that's a point that was of concern to anybody coming into India, that you cannot have a partnership with HAL because their assembly lines, their capabilities and the timelines they will absorb to put together the weapon platform would be so much more that the cost would go up dramatically. And I'm not saying that. This is something which has been written about by The Economist in April 2013, when they talked about why the deal was stuck as long back as 2013. Now, finally, the last point is, the last point is that, you know, we repeatedly keep harping on JPC and other things. Fine, go ahead with it. But it seems too sinister and too coincidental that the Congress is wanting and the UPA is wanting to replicate the same steps that they were put through in the Bofors scandal.
I'm wondering if a politician is going to disagree with you. Yes, it does sound similar, but aren't you paid back in the same penny politically, is what I'm believing the Congress party will say. But Shaina and see, I think a direct question to you, and taking a cue from what Maruf just concluded, you know, a JPC is something that the Congress party has been harping on. Now that you have the apex court of the land question the deal on every count, whether it's process, pricing, offset clause and all of that, why not agree to a JPC? I mean, let's just get this out of the way, because you and I both know if you are not going to agree to a JPC, there will be legislative logjam. There's a winter session that's right around the corner. I don't think work's going to happen. It is going to heighten tension. To diffuse all of this, why not agree to a JPC now that the court in any case, you know, going to look into this? And I think the larger question that I also wanted to ask you, and please be brief, both you and Sanjay Jha, is the CBI probe. Prashant Bhushan refers to this being a CBI probe, and Ranjan Gogoi, India's Chief Justice, turned around and says, let CBI first put its house in order. So are we also looking at a CBI probe of sorts as far as this entire Rafale issue is concerned?
Firstly, let's establish the difference between Bofors and Rafale. Bofors was clearly not just corruption, but corruption with middlemen admitting to have received kickbacks and given kickbacks. I think we need to understand, number one, that our government is not corrupt. Second, and more importantly, you have three petitioners who have a bone of contention with our government, whether it's Mr. Shuri, Yashwant Sinha or Prashant Bhushan, who try to make this into this great national cause, but it's actually their own personal agenda. Without going into that, and with utmost respect to the honorable courts, all I would want to say is this affidavit which is going to be filed will have the necessary information, but do understand there is a secrecy clause where the defense minister and the defense ministry can decide what should be in the public domain and what not. When it comes to Dassault, who they choose as their offset partner, whether they feel HAL was sufficient to provide with all the clauses and whether they were in a position to fit into the guarantee clause or not, is something you should be asking them. So every time the Congress party has no issue left and tries to then piggy bank on suspicious theories to suggest that the CBI has something to reveal, do understand this is not like previous governments where you had corruption which dethroned them. This is a government which is non-corrupt and which will expose what needs to be exposed, whether it is through an affidavit in the courts or what needs to come into the public domain.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer, and thank you also for keeping it brief. One quick last word, and then I have to wrap up. And Sanjay Jha, you know, while the courts are looking at, in some sense, going to look at every detail, and I'm presuming that there will be, you know, some sort of a CBI probe that the courts will also perhaps intervene in, especially given, you know, what has been said. Is it time for politicians to back off, or is it too big a political hot potato for you to let loose off? I mean, you know, this is politically volatile. You would want to rake it up every day. But, you know, an issue like this doesn't augur well for our defense procurement. It doesn't augur well for our armed forces. And more than most other things, there are very other important issues that you also need to take care of. Is this going to be politically a relevant issue at all?
Supriya, this is a massive, monumental defense scam. It concerns your money, the money of all the people who are watching the program right now. think about national security. Narendra Modi has compromised India's national security by reducing the number of squadrons down dramatically. So from 126 aircrafts, we are down to 36. This is the supposedly nationalist government, but which is actually endangering India's capability as an air force. Number three, I think China NC and one of your experts on your panel have actually misled your viewers. The Bofors was a witch hunt. It was an allegation. It's been closed by the courts. Unless they want to indulge in now a contempt of court, they should publicly acknowledge that despite Arun Jaitley and the team trying to hound the Congress party, the matter has been closed by the court. So let them not lie. This is not Bofors. This is a big scam. And the reason why this is a big scam, Supriya, is because this one directly points at the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. He changed the transaction overnight when he landed in Paris. Where was the RFP? Why were the opinions of the former Indian Air Force chiefs dumped? No, let's just give me 15 more seconds.
About the fact that you
as
would
far
not let
as
go of
Reliance
this
Defense is concerned,
Right.
No, let me tell you. Reliance Defense is concerned, Supriya. The company is financially bankrupt as far as its number of its debts to the public sector banks is concerned. It defaulted on foreign currency borrowings. It has zero defense production expertise, and the company is set up with a 5 lakh equity capital 2 weeks before Modi lands up in Paris. I mean, these are not coincidences. It's an open and shut case of corruption. And
sorry,
Madam
I will have to
Shaina
come
and
in there.
Mr. Raza
I've
can keep
completely run out
defending
of
it till
time here on
cows
the
come
show.
home, but now it is with the Supreme Court.
Okay. No. Sanjay Jha, which is why I have a balanced panel. If you believe there are two people defending, there are also two people opposing, and that's how we do debates. You've got a fair chance to speak. I've given equal time to everybody, but I think it is very important for us to take cognizance of what has happened. The apex court of the land has told the government of the day that we want details of pricing, we want details of how the offset partner was chosen. This is a very high-profile petition that has been filed by people like Yashwant Sinha, Prashant Bhushan, and Arun Shourie. The Congress party is obviously trying to look at political gains out of this, like any other party would. But the question is, can we afford to do that? Can we afford to Rafale go the Bofors way, a relentless tirade which may eventually amount to nothing? That's the big question, because at stake is India's defense procurement, at stake is our armed forces and their morale. But it's a big day, it's a red letter day as far as the government is concerned. You asked me impartially, and I think this is a blow for the government. But thank you very much, Ajay Shukla, Maruf Raza, Sanjay Jha and Shaina NC for being with us in this edition of a very special show, the Rafale Row. We're keeping an eye on every development, because eventually it's your money that's going to fund these aircraft, and which is why the story matters.